Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started here. We'll let, people keep filing in as they come. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Kelsey Mills. I'm the program manager for Refresh Appalachia, which is the agricultural program of Coalfield Development. We're a program focused on supporting and shaping the food sector in Central Appalachia. And one of the ways that we do this is through our food hub. And so this distribution 101 training is really focused on food hub work and introducing people to food hubs and to distribution models. So we're really excited to have you with us today. So Robert, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Welcome to Distribution 101. My name is Robert Trombley. I am the Sales and Logistics Coordinator for Refresh Appalachia, which is the agricultural program of Coalfield Development. My background is in retail sales, distribution, and brand management. This background, combined with my experience in local food, will help you all walk away with a better understanding of different distribution models, scalability strategies, and whether distribution is right for you. More about who Refresh Appalachia is. We were founded in 2015. Like I mentioned, with the agricultural program of Coalfield Development, we're focused on developing, shaping, and supporting food and farm sectors in Central Appalachia. Our work in the region's local food system is rooted in four key focus areas. Those areas are workforce development, which is where we aim to remove barriers to employment through paid on-the-job training and personal and professional development for our workforce. Second way we do that is through trainings and technical assistance like this, which range from beginners to advanced food and farm businesses. Um, and we help in areas such as business development and market access. And then where I really fit in the most is with the food hub distribution, where we assist local farmers with aggregation and distribution of produce into local food networks, including markets, schools, and institutions. And finally, we have our farm to school, which is where we connect farmers with schools to provide fresh food for students, facilitate educational programs that teach children about healthy eating and local food. Today, we'll have four learning outcomes. First, we will be trying to understand what distribution is, why it matters, and whether it's a good fit for you. Second, we'll evaluate the pros and cons of self-distribution versus working with a distributor. Third, we'll learn how to work with a distributor from first contact to fulfilling orders. And then four, we will develop practical tools and marketing strategies to prepare your farm for distribution or farm business. All right, part one will be the introduction to distribution. Let's see here. One moment, I gotta pull up my notes. All right. What is agricultural distribution? It's finding a market's need and then aggregating those needs and then delivering the product to the people who need it. I like to look at it as like a larger version of the farm stand versus taking your product to market. Uh, let me see. How is it helpful when accessing wholesale markets? We have already established accounts, relationships, and a sales and logistics person such as myself can help walk you through conversations, any questions you may have when it comes to distribution or pricing. Saves producers valuable time they could be spending back producing on their farms or at their food businesses. Evaluating whether distribution is a fit for you or what type of distribution is a fit will be part two. So is distribution right for you? There's some questions you will want to ask yourself, some considerations that we've listed here. What scale are you currently at? Do you have surplus product throughout the season? Can you consistently meet the demand for quality as well as quantity? Do you have the time and resources for distribution? What are your goals? Is it profit, community impact, scale? Is it lifestyle? And are you prepared for packaging, grading, food safety, and record keeping? And lastly, are you better suited for self-distribution, such as direct sales, or through a distributor for wholesale markets? Just like everything, it has its pros and cons. So we want to make this slide to go ahead and just have the real talk that there are trade-offs when you go into distribution. There's always rejections and losses. And that just roots right back to the last slide. Are you meeting quality standards for both the distributor and for the purchaser? Product chain of custody. I always remind people signatures, 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 because this can save you. For instance, when you deliver lettuce to the distributor and they open the box and they say, oh, there's 15 heads of lettuce here and it looks good. You get them to sign that. So now it's the distributors and they can't come back at you and say, well, actually, it was left out for 3 hours at room temp. Also, insurance. If you've got refrigerated product in your refrigeration unit goes down, are you prepared to eat that loss, or do you have insurance to back that up? Lower margins, but higher volumes. With distribution, there's always a trade-off. This is a conversation. It's always the first conversation I have with people with pricing. Your margins that you take back with you are going to be lower, but your volume will generally be higher. And then also inventory ownership. Who owns the inventory? Like I said, with the chain of custody, pass it off. And there's the 3 tiers of distribution. There's you, the producer. There's the distributors, the middleman, and then there's the purchaser. And then let's see, surplus and overproduction. Are you, there's that double-edged sword of surplus. It's nice to have a bountiful harvest, but do you have a market for it to go to? And then are there commitments that you made that you may underproduce? And all that comes down to communication, just letting people know ahead of time, things happen. So, and then branding concerns. If you have underproduction and you have made commitments that can't be filled and you didn't communicate it, then there's concerns of maybe people that have been buying your tomatoes might start buying somebody else's. So you got to keep those branding concerns in mind. Mission versus market realities. This is pretty much on paper versus in practice. Everything looks great on paper, and then once you put your boots on and you go out there and start doing it, you realize, hey, this is a lot different than I thought it would be. So just keeping those things in mind. And then there's also the will of the consumer. Sometimes you can lead a horse to water and they just don't drink and you can't make them drink. So sometimes it's just the market changes. One year they like this heirloom and next year they like a different. Part 3 will be understanding the different distribution models. And this is pretty much self-distribution versus working with a distributor. So this slide here is the pros and cons of self-distribution. The pros, everybody loves retaining a full margin. You get to take that money and put it in your bank account. Direct consumer relationships, you get to build your own relationships rather than working through someone else's relationships and building off of those. And then you have greater control over your product presentation. This is one I really like to point out because if you don't have a distributor, if you decide to work with a distributor and they don't hold the same standards of product presentation and they don't treat it like it's their product and show ownership and care about as much as you, they're probably not the distributor for you. And maybe self-distribution is still for you until you can find that distributor. Cons, it is time consuming. It is my full-time job. And, I also have a driver on the road too. So there's 2 people that do this distribution over here at the food hub. And then also transportation and storage costs. I have a spreadsheet that I run, and I'm always looking at labor, pay, preventative and corrective maintenance on vehicles, fuel, how much time it takes at stops. So it's just all these things that you would have to take on yourself. And then also limited geographic reach. Do you have a refrigerated truck, which you'll probably hear me use the term reefer for people who aren't familiar, refrigerated truck in the industry. They just call that a reefer truck or a reefer unit. So if you just have a warm box truck and you have produce that is supposed to be kept cold, you're very limited where you can go with that. And if you don't already have established relationships and accounts, you're selling to who you know, and then you're also trying to distribute, and do sales at the same time, which can be very tough. Pros and cons of working with the distributor. Those logistics and storage overhead costs are passed off to us. Access to established customers. You don't have to go out and build your own routes and own customer bases beyond what you already have. You get access to what we already have. And then you get further reach a lot of the times. You know, we have refrigerated units. We're going and picking up from farmers in multiple different counties, delivering different places, and it'd be easier to fit people in there. Cons, like I mentioned earlier, you're gonna have lower margins, and you're gonna have less control over the presentation. Like I mentioned, you're gonna want to work with a distributor that holds those same standards as you, so that you can rest easy at night knowing that they're doing the presentation the way you would like it to be on a shelf. And then less control over customer relationships. That can be frustrating at times if you're working with someone who is not great at customer relationships. That's another reason I'd say work with a distributor that holds the same standards as you, because they would probably hold the same standards in customer relationships as well. All right, understanding the wholesale market. What does wholesale even mean? In food production, wholesale refers to selling your products in larger quantities, usually at a lower per unit price to buyers who are not the end consumers. It involves business to business relationships and can change how you manage production and logistics. Some of these wholesale buyers are restaurants, farmers markets, and some of the medically indicated food box programs that have been going on in the area. And how are prices determined? Competition can determine these prices. Do they have more efficient labor? Do they have cheaper labor? Do they have better equipment that's cutting down on those labor costs? Do they have better processes? Looking into whatever you can do to save yourself time and energy will bring down price. Supply and demand. If any of you all are chicken farmers or egg producers, you would know last year during the drought is a great example of that. The demand stayed the same, but the supply was very low because a lot of people don't put two and two together that when it's really hot and there's not a lot of water, chickens are uncomfortable and don't want to lay eggs. So prices went up and demand stayed the same, and we stayed sold out at the market pretty much the whole year. Market shifts. This can include things such as tariffs, trade deals, funding or lack of funding. And then what factors are important? Consistency, reliability, and food safety. If you can be consistent and you can be reliable and your product meets food safety standards, purchasers and distributors are going to absolutely love that. Part 4, getting ready for distribution. How distribution works. Aggregation, transportation costs, and considerations. This is one of the things that a lot of people don't keep in mind. And like I said earlier, I have a spreadsheet that I run with all this. So you have your labor. Window time is your how long is your driver on the road? It's not all drive time. So a lot of people will plug into Google Maps and say, oh, it's going to take them 8 hours to do this route. And that's not always the reality. You get held up at stops. If you're picking something up, you could be waiting on people. You could have a truck like my driver points out to me all the time, he's got a governor in his truck, so he can only go a certain speed limit. So when you plug into Google Maps, it's assuming you're going the speed limit. So keeping those things in mind when you're building this, if you're going to build a spreadsheet for yourself or anything like that, number of stops. And then the time per stop, I generally put like a 20-minute hold. That's the ideal, is 20 minutes or less. And then another big one a lot of people forget about is vehicle maintenance. It's preventative versus corrective maintenance. There's scheduled and emergency maintenance. So I'll put like a cost per mile. That's the scheduled maintenance. And I'll break out, like a lot of the times, places like Ryder, where you rent trucks from or buy trucks from, will have maintenance programs that you can sign up for. And you can work that into your costs if you choose to do self-distribution. Just look at what it breaks out to per month and how often you're putting your truck on the road to meet that scheduled maintenance. And then generally people suggest that you put aside like 15 to 30% for emergencies. So if you have, cracked windshield or your reefer unit goes down or something just unexpected, you need a plan for those as well. Because once you're out a truck, you're or a vehicle, you're not delivering anything. Also keeping in mind insurance, fuel, road compliance, such as car tags, inspections, reefer costs. It costs money to run a refrigeration unit on a truck, so you're gonna have to keep that in mind when building your spreadsheet. Storage and warehousing. There are costs associated with this. You have to upkeep the space in dry and cold areas to make sure you don't have pests, that everything is labeled where it needs to be correctly. If it's product that has short shelf life, you have to do good old FIFO, first in, first out. Cold storage, you have to make sure that you're not getting buildup of condensation and mold. You got to make sure you keep things clean. No cardboard on the floor. So there are costs with labor, and then also the refrigeration costs of running a cold storage unit. You also have to have the space. A lot of people realize, you got a lot of space out in your fields, but then once you start bringing things in, you quickly start running out of space. A lot of the times, distributors are equipped and ready to have empty space filled with your product. Communication and planning timelines. Distributors work with both producers and purchasers on this. So, planning when your product's going to be ready, when you can get it to us so we can clearly communicate that to the purchaser, and then set up delivery times. Planning ahead for market needs. This is something, once again, we do with both the producers and the purchasers. I guess a good example would be around the 4th of July, people are looking for watermelon. And even right now, I have people looking for pumpkins because if you're selling in a retail outlet, believe it or not, people are putting their fall stuff out now. So just having those planning timelines and communication, it's nice having a distributor do that for you. Order scheduling, cancellations, and fulfillment expectations. Once again, we handle all the order scheduling and rescheduling, taking precious time away from other people. If they're doing that, then we can do that for them. And then we work with the purchasers and the producers on expectation standards and meeting those standards. So once again, it roots back to that slide where we're talking about consistently meeting quantity and quality. And we help communicate that and help meet those standards. Communicating and building partnerships. What questions do you ask a distributor? First, is there a need? If there's a market that has a whole bunch of hydroponic lettuce already, maybe you're not a fit for that market, and maybe there's a distributor in another market where there is a need for that lettuce. So that's always a good place to start. Like, is there even a need for it? Where's the distributor already going? If is there farmers markets that you've always wanted to distribute to, or food box programs you've wanted to be a part of, or places they're going. Margins, and this is for all 3 tiers. This is a big conversation we had. Most of my distribution background, I should have mentioned earlier, is in beverage sales and distribution. But if we had like a new brewery come in, this would be one of the first things we talked about is what margin are you looking for as the producer? Because we always start there. And then once the conversation goes further, we realize that maybe that's not as obtainable, or maybe you're doing pretty well with the margin you're asking for. Because in the middle, you have the distributor. Like I told you, I'm running that spreadsheet. I'm looking at how much it costs in labor, keeping the tags up to date on the truck and maintenance and all that, fuel. So what margins am I looking for to cover my overhead? And then what margins is the end, not the end consumer, but the business, like the market. Let's say it's like a food fair, for instance. I've heard somebody throw out that food fair likes to make 30 to 35% on some products. What are they looking for? So once you have all those numbers out on the table, you can have an honest conversation about where's your break even, how much volume can we move to meet where you might not get that margin but how much do we need to move to get to that number that you get to put in the bank? And then what questions will distributors ask you? Where are you currently selling? You don't want to accidentally, like turn around and try to, I've seen it happen before where you turn around and try to sell somebody the same product they already have. It's a little embarrassing. So making sure they ask, where are you at right now? So we're not stepping on your toes in your home turf or anything like that. What are your goals? At that one slide we were talking about, is your goal profit? Is it community building? Some people, it must be nice. Profit isn't everything to them. It might be a lifestyle. So what are your goals? Do you just want your brand out there, something to pass on to your children? Like what, just thinking about those things. Pricing, and just like the margin one before, were questions to ask a distributor. They're going to ask you about pricing and margins as well. What's your break even? What are the other tiers? What are they looking for? And then they'll bring that to you. And then how to present your farm and product professionally. Clear, clean labeling. You want to have your name, contact info. If you have a set pricing, put that on there. Not all the time is that a reality because it changes depending on the market. And then shelf location. That's a huge one, eye level. Some people actually pay for shelf locations. In the non-alcoholic beverage world, that is a huge market. Pepsi and Coke throw around a lot of money to have their product right there eye level. So working with smaller markets, saying, hey, can I have a little say over where my product goes and how it's presented can actually really increase sales. And when I say a clear, clean label, I work with the Wow ramp down the road from where we're located. They're a farmer's market. And for instance, I was talking to them recently about they have a milk they sell there. When you're shopping, you look at that milk and you see the name, you see what it is, but I didn't see a price. And so I just kept walking. I didn't know. Well, how much does that cost? I'm at a farmer's market. Some people in their minds might think it's a premium product if they don't know the price. So making sure that you have all of it in a quick glance snapshot, because you know it when you go shopping, consumers quick glance and then they move on. And then I just touched a little bit on this already, but marketing and sales readiness. You want to have your packaging and labeling clear and clean, retail ready, which is, have scannable UPC barcode, warning labels, if your product is potentially hazardous or if there's anything you might want to warn the consumer about to make sure that actually protects you from litigation as well. And then once again, like I said, try to have it all in one glance, a quick snapshot where you can say, hey, this is what it is. This is who it's from. This is how much it costs. And this is something that I actually just today was working on. I kind of had like no, Robert, you know this, where people kept asking me, what's coming next week? What's coming next week? What's coming next week? It's nice to have everything in one spot, even if you don't 100% know what you're going to have next week. For instance, I did this with my food boxes and I did it through the form of a Google Doc because that's something Google Docs is something free everybody can use and you can share it with people and they can access it where I at least start building the food box. I don't always know, like for instance, today I had to like scramble last minute because some commitments fell through and I had to go find some new lettuce and also add some fruit to the box. But a week ago, I knew I was going to have 4 products in that box. I can go ahead and put that up in that Excel, not Excel, but Google spreadsheet or Google Doc that I'm sharing with them. And so that they know ahead of time. And that really just helps with ease of mind too. Nobody likes uncertainty. So having it all in a central location, easy to find and digestible information. You don't want to have it all scattered and cluttered to something that only makes sense to you, pretty much. You want to break it down, like explain it to me like I'm new to this kind of thing. And then having an online presence and farm bios is huge. There's been a lot of the times where I've heard of brand where somebody's like, hey, have you heard of blank? And I go and I look them up and I can't find them anywhere. Or if I do find them, it's a Facebook that last post was from 2013, you want to You don't have to have a website. That's a very common one people have. Um, Websites are good for people if they don't want a social media, like I said, the social media that wasn't updated since 2013. That's a lot of time, just like with distribution. That's a lot of time and energy you have to put into something. Where a website is something you can make what they call static. It never changes. It has the farm story, who we are, and all that. Now, social media is going to be for more of the go-getters that are looking to spend that extra time and energy to potentially increase their sales, but definitely increases their brand recognition what plays into sales. And with Facebook's and Instagram and TikTok, um, I would look to more trainings to see, there's a whole world there where you have to at least post 3 times a week, if not daily, to let people know what you have, what's going on. Even if you don't have product ready, just having something like fun tomato facts, like, so looking into if you are going to go the social media route, make sure you do it in a way that's very intentional and that will help build your brand recognition versus, setting you back a little bit where somebody goes to your Facebook and goes, oh, I wonder if this farm's even in existence anymore. They haven't posted since 2013. And then the last point there on the online presence and farm bios is point of sale for markets. For instance, that milk brand I brought up earlier, they will send window clings that say Snowville Creamery, and you can stick it right on the door. Or if it's a restaurant, they'll have table tents that you can set up, and it tells a quick little blurb about the farmer, um, and the product and why it's good for you. And then food safety and certifications. If any of you all have been looking into distribution, I'm sure you've all heard of FSMA and GAP. So those are food safety farm certifications. At the very least, I tell people, and I've heard this before from others, coming up with a farm and food safety plan and being able to speak to it, even if you're not able to front the costs or whatnot for the GAP and the FSMA, you can at least do the work. And some purchasers, that might even be enough for them if you show them like, hey, if somebody got sick, I know how to trace it back to where they got sick so that somebody doesn't get sued. Because that's all these food safety and certifications is just like the chain of custody with product I was talking about earlier, who owns it? If there's a recall and somebody's getting sued, who owns it? So food safety, warning labels, certifications up to date, displayed, record keeping, and traceability are huge. So just making sure you do all that will have you market ready and sales ready. Now, I did kind of go through this a little quicker than I expected, but these are some resources here. First off, we are Refresh Appalachia, and we provide support and guidance for farmers. And so that's some information on us. Then NC State's extension, I'm also a little biased with NC State because I was born in North Carolina, so that's one of the first extensions I got to work with. And some of the information from this PowerPoint was actually from their how to sell produce to a distributor. So I would definitely check that out. And then SARE, building local and regional food systems. They are great, especially for sustainable agriculture. I actually just shared not long ago, somebody was talking about rain collection with a high tunnel, and they have a whole like how-to on how to build your own rain collection for a high tunnel. So it's just great resources all around, just beyond distribution, being market ready for farmers as well. And then any questions, thoughts, and this is where you can find us. And this is my contact information if needed.
Yeah, so anyone, if you have any questions, please drop those in the chat. To start, I do have a few questions that were sent to me, Rob. So I'll go ahead and ask those. The first question I have here is, what's the best first step to start building a relationship with a distributor or with an institutional buyer?
Let me see here. So a good first step, I would say, is obviously introductions and finding out where they are currently working and where you can fit in. Especially if you're a smaller producer, you might not be ready for the volume at a school, because that's a lot of mouths to feed. But what you might be ready for is for instance, one of my food box programs this year, I have three of them. One's 35 patients, one's 30 patients, and one's only 10 patients. So you could easily say, oh, I can grow enough bush beans to feed 10 patients. So I think that's a great starting point, is just what are you working on and where do I fit in? And just be honest with them where you're currently at.
Awesome. The next question I have here are what are some unexpected risks or hidden costs that farmers often overlook when moving into distribution?
I would have to say that's why I spent so much time on talking about building that spreadsheet or something. It doesn't have to be a spreadsheet. I'm a spreadsheet person. I love them. But the labor, those pretty much what was the term I used? Preventative versus corrective maintenance. Just looking at, your truck is going to need this scheduled maintenance monthly, quarterly, but what you don't expect is your reefer unit to go down and you not have insurance. And so it's a lot, I would say, to keep in mind, but I would say, yeah, definitely labor and maintenance costs would be a big one, and storage of your cold products too.
Great. And then the third question I have here is what kind of infrastructure or record keeping do distributors expect from producers?
No, that's actually a really good one. Um, so first off, some type of invoicing is huge. A lot of people some people will be like, duh, you got to have an invoice, but you'd be surprised the amount of times that I've picked up, just recently I picked up 35 dozen eggs, and what was handed to me was a piece of paper that just said 35 dozen eggs for Robert Trombley. So I actually will provide resources sometimes to farmers where I have like a Word document that's just like a very generic invoice that they can just type into, or just those pads of paper that they sell at Walmart. They're just little booklets, and you can hand them a copy, you have a copy. But record keeping, definitely when you delivered, if somebody signed for it, I would hang on to those. Um, I've had that happen before where a school's reached out and said, hey, you didn't deliver that. And it's like, well, yeah, we did. No, you didn't. Well, yeah, we did. Well, and then the conversation all ended with this guy signed for it right here. It's all about whose signature's on it. So pretty much anything that can come back to bite you cost wise, I would just take very good notes. And emailing. A lot of farmers love to hop on the phone, and that's great. I am a phone guy too, but sometimes it is great to have a paper trail. Just so you can always reference back to it. You don't know how many times I've gone into my email search and searched something and just said, here, that is what we talked about, and so I think that is good record keeping too, is try to keep a paper trail, both physically and electronically.
We've got another question here from Connor. He said, Rob, will you say more about traceability and food safety in distribution? What management systems do you use?
Yeah, so most of the time I am counting, when it comes to the traceability of the product, I'm counting on the farmer's traceability first and foremost, because that's where the product came from. Once it's in our custody and we sign off on it, I'm pretty much just watching for, uh, I call it cold chain, is where, my driver comes to the dock and let's say he switches off his reefer unit. Um, he has standards of this needs to be in this cooler in this amount of time or less. I always say immediately. And then just documenting temperatures. Keeping a temperature log is huge. But most of it does go back to um, where it was produced and how it was produced, and if somebody gets sick, how it goes back to there. And then that could come back to the distributor too, though. That's why I was saying make sure you're keeping your time and temp logs. I've especially been having my driver do that recently. We've been distributing frozen meat. That's huge, with a frozen chain of cold chain there. So
Well, I don't think that we have any more questions, but if anyone thinks of a question later, or if they'd like to reach out for one-on-one assistance in distribution and logistics, what's the best way that they reach out to you, Rob?
yeah, email is always a really good one. But if you do need immediate help, as I said, I do enjoy talking on the phone. And that number right there, you can text it as well. And I think somebody already tried calling it, maybe.
Okay, well, that seems to be the end of the question. So that is the end of our presentation. We hope that this has been helpful for you all. And like we said, this is a really good introduction sort of refresher, but we have lots more information that we can always provide and a lot more support that we can offer to farmers who are seeking out distribution options. So please reach out to Robert or to anyone else from the Refresh team if you're looking for technical support. And thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone.